Welcome to the Living Connected podcast. I'm your host, Mallory Meyer. I'm a multi-six-figure online entrepreneur, founder of White Wolf Reiki, and creator of the Frequency Business Mastery School. I weave together the metaphysical with the science of the subconscious mind and timeless business principles to help you take your passion for serving and empowering others full time. I'm not just here to teach you how to build a profitable and aligned business, but to invite in more authenticity, awareness, clarity, and certainty in what, who, and how you serve. In return, to generate more sales as you cultivate greater confidence and wealth through deeper self-sovereignty and advocacy, inviting in a trauma-sensitive approach to protocols and processes in our marketing and selling as we honor each client's humanity in the process of living more connected. This podcast is here to connect you further to your self-mastery for business, your lifestyle, and of course, your mindset. Join me on my mission to uplift and elevate the collective to love and light. This episode already has me fired up to record because for those who do know me quite personally, you know how competitive I am, and we are going to be tapping into how competitive sports can really train those who desire to move into entrepreneurship to succeed. I'm going to be speaking about some characteristics, giving you some context into my own journey as well, while tapping into other research that has been provided and focused in on to really speak to what are those behaviors and characteristics that we develop at such a formative age that can be transferred over. And as a small footnote, just to add, it's not just sports that I'm competitive in, very competitive in games, and most recently, if there's any fellow Monopoly Deal players out there, or my favorite, Dutch Blitz. And what really sparked my desire to come forward to share a little bit more in my journey in competitive sports, as well as these parallels between entrepreneurship and sports, is actually through a Reiki healing that I received today. And in my discussion with my Reiki master, we were talking a lot about rest. And in a reflection, very transparently, in this second year of my business, not only have I been growing at 2 times the rate that I was in my first year, but simultaneously, I've been resting and I've been healing and I've been creating so much more spaciousness in comparison to my first year of business while generating so much more wealth. And with that said, I do struggle at times with resting. And what I mean by that is, as much as we can say, I am going to rest mentally in my nervous system, I am still very charged and activated, thinking about my business, thinking about my clients, thinking about something maybe new that I'm creating. And it's really taking away from that opportunity to truly disconnect, discord, and be very connected just within myself, to be in stillness and truly, if we look at the definition of rest. And this beautiful reframe that was brought to my attention of shifting my approach and my lens of rest into something that is so valuable. It's essential to be able to move forward, which in turn led me to this topic of sports, training specifically. From a very, very young age, I was put into competitive sports, that being specifically competing nationally for swimming. So I was a competitive swimmer. I absolutely loved it with all my heart. And unfortunately, it was just a crossroads for my parents with my sister at the time of having to choose between continuing with the demand that competitive swimming required to also then be playing soccer. And I chose soccer because I got to be more with my friends at that point and at that age. But in retrospect, if I could have continued with swimming, I absolutely would, because I am a fish in water. But let's fast forward and really move into my 20s here, where I really found and became so in love with running. Running was an escape. And as you heard in episode 1, the ghosting episode that transpired in my life, at that point in time, that's really where running was truly a place for me to go for healing. It allowed me to just get out of my mind, into my body, and just get in a very less anxious state than if I were to just be at home. It almost actually became an unhealthy escape for me, just with the volume of running that I was doing. And this is really where I got a lot of satiation and excitement in being a part of marathon training. Whether it was half marathons or my very first marathon that I completed was the Chicago Marathon, really spending my time and focus giving that to running. And so when came the time of when I was truly committed to marathons as well as getting invested into Olympic triathlons, I hired a running coach. And what I loved about the approach in retrospect is really looking at how there are so many parallels again here when we think about business. And you may think as well that an individual hiring a running coach, there's a requirement to have a lot of miles or kilometers each week to meet your goal. But to my surprise, we were actually not spending that much time running. Can you guess what we were spending time doing? Resting. We were focusing on rest. And that could have looked like a little bit of strength training, intervals, different ways to allow my body to build up greater levels of speed that didn't necessarily require myself to be running. And of course, when I say rest in this context, it really did mean taking days off. And if there are any running fanatics out there, you probably remember a documentary by Nike that came forward back in 2019 called Breaking 2, featuring Eliud Kipchoge's dream to break the 2-hour marathon. In 2017, he actually teamed up with Nike to complete this first sub 2-hour attempt and unfortunately missed his mark by 26 seconds that day. But through that attempt, he learned so much, and it also really ignited that passion and realization of his dream of running a marathon in under 2 hours, which he successfully completed, of course, 2 years later in 2019, completing a once crazy thought at 1 hour, 59 minutes, and 40 seconds, which is almost a little bit like my half marathon time, but it is astonishing. And what I really want to echo here for you is witnessing through this relentlessness, and it's not to say breaking down and burning yourself out in any sense, but in being relentless on focusing on a goal, pursuing that, anything is possible. Before Kipchoge's dream was a reality here, remember almost there was a time of people thinking that the 4-minute mile wasn't even possible. So I offer for you just to even take a pause here and ask yourself, is there anything that you're feeling that may not be possible? And what action will you take, or what habit will you create to overcome as best as possible? Now, before understanding the parallels between sports and business, it's necessary for us to understand how entrepreneurs and athletes are similar. In my opinion, sports creates expansive entrepreneurs. And it's not to say if you've never been called to sports or been competitive or been through a training regime and cycle that you're not going to be an expansive entrepreneur. But by examining some of these characteristics that I'll be sharing in this episode, perhaps you'll have some deeper exploration and ability to possess these in order to help you succeed as well. So I'm going to be specifically tapping into 5 here and really also getting into an exercise that you can start to implement more daily for yourself to tap into some of the focus that entrepreneurs embody and remain deeply connected to their why. So the first characteristic that I'm going to be diving into is passion. Passion held both with athletes and entrepreneurs. Of course, when we think about an athlete who is passionate, it's almost like all they really do is breathe and live that sport, especially through their training cycle. When I'm thinking about entrepreneurs and the passion that we require, it's really that driving force, that burning ignition within us to keep us going, regardless of the circumstances external to us. because of course with entrepreneurship there is so much uncertainty and ebbs and flows. So it's really critical to hold on to the passion behind our why in choosing to do this work. This passion held in both the athlete and the entrepreneur also elicits a lot of tenacity to either show up on off season and continue to train on weekends, just like the entrepreneur who continues to work on weekends, who doesn't take roadblocks or not meeting their goals as signs of failure, and just persevering and continuing to do that internal work and knowing and trusting again that it is on the other side. The second characteristic here is self-confidence. With the athlete, self-confidence, not just being in front of spectators, not just having the confidence and drive within themselves to know, again, when I'm thinking back to those training days of running a marathon, even having the confidence in myself to know I could just complete the race. My body could withhold and have the endurance to be on my feet for that amount of time, to even within triathlon, swim that amount of distance, get on a bike, then run. The confidence alone in just that ability within your body to perform is one like no other. And when I'm thinking about entrepreneurs and the confidence, of course, this being one of the biggest factors and why episode 2 was really featured around confidence and courage, but self-confidence to be able to be comfortable being seen, speaking to the results of your program, trusting that your clients are attracted and they're desiring to work with your unique energy, as well as just the confidence in yourself, most importantly, to deliver, to continue to show up. And that in this moment, right now, you are enough. Now, number 3 is looking at our tolerance for fear, or even our risk threshold, call it. But when I think about athlete more here, the tolerance for fear in being able to, especially all the time that you give to training, it's a lot more extracurricular. It's not in whether it's a stadium or in front of individuals or moving towards achieving a specific goal or time in a race. And that tolerance for fear of they still move beyond that fear and perform regardless of that unknown on the other side, or the jitters and the nervousness that can come forward to the surface that can equally be so overwhelming to take action in that moment on the day of. Now, in translation, of course, with an entrepreneur, the tolerance for fear and your risk threshold is a high one. Of course, there is so much fear that arises when we make that transition to decide and make the commitment to start a business, to step into this uncharted territory, to take this new venture, and whether it's even releasing judgments from family, from friends, always coming back into harnessing this fear and using it as fuel. And just in my own experience, I feel like there's been so many times in where I've been met with fear, especially fear of moving all my life, living in Toronto and coming to Vancouver in 2018, not knowing what was here, how our life would unfold. But through the fear, in the development of the safety I've been able to cultivate within and having the stability I do and I've created for myself, there's been so much beauty on that other side. The fourth characteristic we are going to be diving into here is flexibility and adaptability, that of which with an athlete, truly looking at it, the most prominent one being weather conditions, being adaptable in races outside, even in stadiums that are open, uncertain weather conditions, and having the flexibility and adaptability to adjust and still perform. That goes being said as well if you do have a team, and having flexibility with members leaving and those coming in, how you're embracing and adapting to each individual's style. Of course, when I look at that too from the lens of an entrepreneur, that can look like if you currently have a team and by choice that individual on the team is looking to leave, or you're making some restructuring plans, how you are able to adapt and also have cohesiveness and open communication with all team members, but also most importantly, the flexibility that's demanded of an entrepreneur to make changes. Yes, of course, we have boundaries, but there's also aspects in which we need to keep up with, most importantly, economics and the industry itself. We constantly need to pivot and be abreast of these changes that are arising, that are really looking at, especially when I think about right now as I'm filming this podcast, the recession is very prevalent. We just came out of COVID and the pandemic, but now, especially in my messaging and in my marketing, how am I making and being flexible to know again what my client is really desiring as they are faced with this economic crisis? Now, last but not least, and probably one of my most favorite ones to speak about as a characteristic here, is having the vision. And it's not just some fluffy, loosey-goosey vision that you have held in your mind. I want you to be so tangibly clear here in what you are hearing, in what you are feeling, in what you are seeing. Because just like the athlete, they need to hold that vision of themselves being a winner. And there were so many times, especially when working with coaches, we allocated time to focus on our vision. Whether it was, and this was actually moving through both how we were crossing that finish line, the time that we were seeing, and how that experience was for us moving through that race, but also the vision of what happens when your knee starts to give out, when you get really sore, or you have in your calf a spasm. How are you going to move through that pain and still continue in the race? And being able to put myself in that vision and really see how I would overcome it before that race was phenomenal. I also have supported some other athletes to date in really focusing on their goals and reaching their vision by moving through exactly this practice. Now, of course, with entrepreneurship, we really want to talk about a vision and seeing the path of success in, more so than anything, how is our higher self being embodied when we have reached that goal? What are the thoughts that they are holding? What are the beliefs that they are holding? The energy that they are carrying and the choices that they are making when it's already done. And when we start to tap into that energy now and not necessarily just wait for it, we can already start to show up as them and start to see those results formulate, of course, in our reality piece by piece. And if you are truly one who is open to move through a vision practice yourself, then I would highly suggest you do so when your subconscious is most primed, whether that be when you wake up, allocating some time, or before you go to bed. As much as I've just covered 5 high-level characteristics to bring deeper awareness and connection in for yourself between being an athlete and an entrepreneur, another thing that goes without being said is every successful athlete knows that they need to have a coach. And it's not even just a coach. At times, they need to have a specific trainer, a physical therapist perhaps, a nutritionist to even help to elevate them. There's a whole diverse ecosystem that they bring in to bring them to the results. And it's not to say that you need 4 different people to open you up to the level of success that you're desiring, but perhaps in one point in your business, you may. And especially when you're thinking about starting out, how you can really expend a greater amount of time and focus on those core priorities to help you get to your goals with the support of a guide, a mentor, and a coach as well. Knowing again that we all aren't here to do it alone. A lot of your business is going to go through short little sprints rather than marathons. It's almost thinking about even how a lion operates. So you really need to have the right frame of mind to also preserve not just your energy level, but of course, to be able to withhold those times when it's not necessarily a sprint taking place. And this is really whether for myself or my clients, if a goal is not met, it's not about running harder or more. It's not about even producing or creating more. It's about looking at what's happening internally. Where is there a need for more calibration within your nervous system and your body to be able to hold and receive more? What's the thought and feeling that's not in true congruency, perhaps, to what you want? And this is really where the beauty of mindset work takes place. When we tap into that theta brainwave, tapping into your subconscious and unlocking a memory that you may not even consciously be aware of, that's running these programs and patterns in your day to day. And as we do so, you're able to hold faith and trust in your own self-concepts to achieve your results, being willing to be infinitely working on it, to be infinitely believing in what's possible, and to be infinitely believing that the result is guaranteed no matter what. Much like when it comes to any race day, willing to accept and receive feedback openly, no matter the result. And truly, just taking a moment to celebrate just showing up at the starting line. Choosing to begin a transformation of any kind should not be taken lightly. And so, if you are to decide around investing in a coach to help you, I'm also going to invite in here some questions that you may consider asking yourself as well. These include, what do I want to change? Am I ready and willing to change? Am I ready to accept help on my journey? Will I be coachable? Do they have a coach? Do they speak my language? Will this investment guide me to step out of my comfort zone? Why did they choose this as a career? And lastly, do they inspire me to stretch and see possibilities? So if you've ever thought, could competitive sports really give me an edge in business? Whether this just gave you some peace of mind, some aha, some new awareness, really knowing also how you can stay cool under pressure, both in being an athlete and an entrepreneur. I can go on and on, but the beauty of it all, and especially sometimes the way the word competitive can get a bad rap, maybe this just brings in a little bit more lightness for you. I'd love to hear, as always, anything that you want to share and how this episode landed for you. And until next week, thank you so much again for tuning in to the Living Connected podcast. If you're an energy healer desiring to build and scale a profitable and aligned business, there are 2 evergreen opportunities to explore to take that next step together. One is my 10-week course, mastermind, and coaching accelerator known as Frequency Business Mastery School. This is more than just your normal one-to-one course and coaching program. It truly fills the gap that most programs fail to address with this subconscious reprogramming and identity shifts that take place within you. It has self-paced modules, but the program also has these subconscious elements, so we're busting through the blocks that have kept you from experiencing the success that you want while simultaneously regulating your nervous system to calmly and safely expand your energetics towards that which you do desire to create in your business. You also have teachings and lessons to enhance your psychic gifts and biohack your energy with the tools provided. All of this is delivered into your hands so you can feel empowered and confident implementing beyond this program, even when blocks arrive in the future. Secondly, I have one spot open next month to onboard a new one-to-one 6-month client to receive that highest level of support and resources as you choose to build and scale a business. Links for each are available in the show notes.